Hello everyone, my name is Loco and welcome to another game of StarCraft 2 Heart of the Swarm. Today we're gonna take a look at a Zerg vs Protoss that I played last night, and this time around it is going to be a game where I get a bunch of run-bys done inside of the Protoss main base. Now today I want to be talking about how you can execute run-bys and how you can actually easily like deselect Zerglings out of a hotkey group, because that seems to be the main issue, right? Like if you have like a big clump of army on one hotkey group and all of a sudden you get the chance to actually run inside of the main base, how are you gonna go ahead and try and execute that, and how are you gonna go ahead and actually re-hotkey your army afterwards? So ideally what you want to try and achieve is get like half of your Zerglings inside of his main base, half of his Zerglings inside of the natural, and then in the meantime also push with like the rest of your army at the third base, right? Like that is on paper going to be the best way to play it. However, more often than not, obviously this is not going to be allowed with a Protoss player, but there's a couple things that you can try and do when you are a little bit later on into the game. And for the time being, I can't really explain it yet until a little bit later into the game, so definitely stick around. Early on in this game, it is just going to be a pretty standard Zerg vs Protoss. Now, this was played on the random account. As many of you will be aware, I am currently playing some random games just to learn the different matchups as well, which means that my opponent isn't going to be of like the highest level of play. I think my opponent is like, I've been facing a lot of like low masters and like top diamonds recently, so he's somewhere in that general region of skill level, somewhere around the top 10,000 world, something like that. But anyways, you know, normally I play first a little bit of a higher caliber player on the European side of the world, on my actual Zerg account. So, you know, especially if you're not playing versus like really good players, run-bys are one of the best ways to get into the game, okay? By playing some off-races myself, by playing some actual Protoss myself, I've noticed how annoying it is. Same for Terran actually. Having like 8 speedlings in your main base or in natural is the worst. If there's a lot of Zerglings in your main base and you don't have warp gates or anything done yet, or they're on cooldown or anything like that, you can deal significant amounts of damage, and it's actually really annoying. I was not aware how annoying it really is. So ever since then, ever since the couple days that I've been playing Protoss now, and playing some Terran as well, I've started doing more run-bys, just knowing for the fact that it's so annoying for a Terran and Protoss player to deal with. You know, it's working out well. It's working out well. Every single time we get Zerglings in, it's pretty much a guaranteed victory. Now, I did see a little bit of weird probe movement right there by my opponent. So I did decide to actually check with a drone to see what was going on. See if he maybe was going for a cannon rush inside of my main base. I did go for a spawning pool into a hatchery, and my opponent did also scout this. So I would be surprised if he actually, you know, was gonna go for a cannon rush, but you never know. Sometimes if all of a sudden 2 cannons are done, you are gonna be in a lot of trouble, so rather safe than sorry. But right now I'm checking his main base, I'm seeing, okay, there's double gas guys is up already. He's got a gateway right there, there's a cybernetics core finished. He's likely gonna go for the expansion right now because I saw the probe move down, which is usually around the 4 to 4.5 minute mark is when you would usually see the gateway expand. So I'm assuming that everything is just good to go right now and that we don't need to worry about much of anything. Gonna go for a bunch of extra queens as well as my Zergling speed. Now I do need the queens obviously to make sure that I get my queen injects done, as well as to actually create the Zerglings. Now my goal for this specific game is to go, I believe, for roaches and Zerglings and maybe eventually Hydralisks. That is sort of the style I've been playing a lot. Obviously you also have the option to go for like Mutalisk and whatnot, but Roach Zergling, Hydra is sort of like a great way to start off with a focus on mainly Zerglings early on. Recently I've been trying to get more like early Zergling speed, which seems to be what most of the professional gamers are doing right now. I didn't really use this for a long time. I used to be like mostly like gasless openers and stuff, but nowadays I'm trying to mix in some Zergling speed early on, which allows for some more scouting and obviously also an easier defense against like early game aggression. And then with a bit of a later third, everything seems to line up just fine. Haven't really scouted too much, but I know the essentials. I know that there are 2 gas guys up. I know that there's an expansion going on right now, so I know that my opponent can switch into pretty much anything. I mean, he can go for, well, here you can see my opponent's weird wall, by the way, because I was playing random. It's a bit of a weird wall. But, you know, considering I know that this setup is going on right now, my opponent can go for Gateway. He can go for like an all-in with gateways. He can go for robotics facility, Stargate, quick, you know, there's all kinds of strategies that he can be going for right now. And since it is so wide open, and since the strategy is so wide open in so many different ways, I am gonna have to sacrifice an Overlord just to try and figure out what is going on. Now, I did make a couple of Zerglings. The Zerglings are already running across the map, and the main reason for that, well, there we see, by the way, the robotic facility, but the main reason for that is because of that weird wall that my opponent made. Every now and then you will see walls like this that just aren't very safe. There is like a double gap right there, and obviously you can easily fix that, but most of the Protoss players really won't. And I'm just gonna try and get in here. I'm just gonna see if I can get up that ramp. We'll be able to pick off that one probe right there, and, well, dodging the force field, now there are Zerglings in his main base. Now, obviously, this one is pretty straightforward. What happened right here is that I simply just made a bunch of Zerglings right when Zergling speed finished, and I tried getting inside of the main base. Now, one thing to note is that, especially if there's, like, a sentry down, you gotta make sure you don't, like, push in right away. If you push in right away, oftentimes these Protoss player is just gonna force field you out. You gotta do a little bit of jinxing. So what I did in this specific one is actually walk around a little bit, kill that one probe, and then run in the main base. So I think he expected me to retreat, and it was like, oh snap, there's Zerglings inside of my main base. I found that if you just run straight up the ramp, more often than not, the Protoss player is just gonna force field and you don't get it. So, you know, just a little tip, just try and not run in instantly. Try and jinx your opponent into thinking that you're gonna go for a run by, but then you don't actually go for the run by. He doesn't want to waste the force field energy, and then you do go for a run by. It's like a weird little mental game, but it seems to be a lot more efficient than just straight up right clicking up the ramp and hoping that you get in there, because most of the time it doesn't work. Obviously, micro-wise right there wasn't that much to do. I could have definitely done that better. Should have just shift queued between the actual workers, but in total, so quick look, how many workers did I kill? I killed 8 workers, so, you know, not too shabby. Definitely worth like 8 Zerglings or whatever it was. Did also, you know, in the meantime, drone up pretty hard, got my lair going up, and I have now started my my glial reconstitution, which is road speed, and I'm also going to be starting more roaches right now, just to make sure that I can hold any kind of all-ins. A little bit later on into the game, though, we will get another run by, and that is the main one that I want to be talking about and how to execute things like that. For the time being, though, I'm just going to try and defend first on all-in. Right now, I haven't really spotted the third base yet, which is the one thing that's sort of throwing me off. Considering I haven't seen a third base, I am a little bit hesitant right now about making any more drones. Take a look at the income tab. Well, I'm actually very far ahead about after that run by. But normally, you know, you don't want to start falling behind too much, because it's just going to be very, very scary if you are gonna, you know, start getting in trouble. Now, here we go. My opponent is putting down that Nexus on the low ground. It is around the 10-minute mark, which is a normal time right now, considering he was slightly delayed. And I'm just going to try and maybe get a cancel down. Now, here's the run by that I'm talking about. How do you hotkey this, okay? So, right now, these Zerglings are running in the main base. I will be able to split half of them up, but in the meantime, my roaches are still fighting right here, and Zerglings are all over his main base. But in the meantime, when I'm actually microing my roach army, these roaches are not gonna start being annoying and, like, you know, mess everything up, and the Zerglings aren't gonna run back, and, you know, how does this one work? So my opponent does GG out right there. Now, there's one little trick that you can do that most people are not aware of, that I personally wasn't aware of for a very long time. And it happens right around right here. Basically, if you have, like, one hotkey group, right? So my one hotkey group right now, which is hotkey number 1, contains... Well, we can't actually click on it, but my hotkey number 1 right now contains all of my Zerglings, all of my roaches, and all of the cocoons that are gonna be Zerglings and roaches. So basically, they are everything that has my army, okay? Now, the way you can deselect from that control group is quite straightforward by holding down Ctrl-Shift and clicking on the Zerglings in the bottom of the selection screen. So basically, what happens is you have the roaches and the Zerglings on one control group, and the cocoons as well. You Ctrl-Shift click the Zerglings. Or wait, okay, let me rephrase it. Basically what you do, you set your whole army into one control group, you right click inside of the main base, so your army is actually gonna go there. Then you hold down Ctrl-Shift, deselect the Zerglings at the bottom of the screen, hit Ctrl+1 again, which remakes that hotkey group, and then you actually attack move with the rest of your army inside of the third base, or, you know, wherever you need to be. Now, what happens at that point is that the Zerglings are deselected from the control group, and the roaches are actually still gonna be in that exact same control group. And that's gonna be a little tiny mindset sort of situation, but what happens is that you will have one control group with all of your army, and then, you know, Zerglings that are not in a control group anymore, and it works out pretty much every single time. So if you take a look right here at the number, so right now you can see 48, I'm gonna right click in the main base. Well, in a little bit. I am gonna right click in the main base. deselect my Zerglings, and as you can see, that number dropped to 30. So right now, these Zerglings are not on a hotkey group anymore. I'm gonna individually micro those to the back of the main base, making sure they move command and then like a little attack move as well. And you know, I'm gonna manually like split up like a couple just for the main base as well. And in the meantime, if I go back to control group number 1 or hotkey group number 1, I will be able to just keep microing the rest of my army. And it's a really quick thing. So once again, hotkey number 1 where your entire army is, right click in the main base, control shift is units that you want to deselect, and then control +1 again, and then go back to microing. It's pretty straightforward. I would highly recommend you give it a try, because if you don't, your Zerglings are just gonna start attacking this cannon, right? Like right now, if I want to attack move with my 1 control group, and my Zerglings would still be on it, they're all just gonna die to this cannon, and he's just gonna warp into Zealots and be like, LOL, Zergling run by, absolutely pointless. Whereas if they aren't on a control group, and you can just sort of split them off, without them starting to micro their own way, because you're attack moving, because they're in a control group, it is gonna be a lot easier to actually deal some damage with a run by. Hopefully this little tip helped you out. If it did, make sure you hit that like button, and also if you want to see more, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I want to thank you guys all for watching. Have an amazing day. Do not forget to smile, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!